Hello and welcome to Stories That Shape Us. My name is Joanna Daniel. Today is Mother's Day in the UK, and I thought about doing something that is connected to, because I know that not everybody's celebrating today. But first, I want to say Happy Mother's Day to the women and to the mothers rather, and I hope that you had a lovely, lovely day. Now, as I said, I know that not everybody is celebrating today because there are lots of women who are healing from toxic relationships with mothers, and they are the same way. Not while not all mothers are celebrating, not all mothers are celebrated. So there are mothers who have daughters who are toxic, narcissistic relationship dynamics through no fault of their own. There are many reasons why this happens. And there are also mothers who aren't celebrated because they are the harmful one in the relationship. I suppose what I'm saying is sometimes the mother-daughter relationship can be really challenging for both mother and daughter. And I know here at Wounds to Scars, we tend to work with daughters who are healing from harmful relationship with their mothers, but there are times when I meet and have to also support women who are the recipient of relationships with daughters that aren't healthy, and the relational dynamic isn't healthy. Because what we know is that it's not just us and our genes that impacts our children. You know, there are things that didn't start with us. There are things that is in the father's DNA and in generations above him. And there are also things that happens in society, and there are things that, you know, forms our children that is outside of our control. There's so many things happening in that can impact that relationship. There's our traumas that we experienced when we were growing up, and even though we have changed now, the relationship, how it was in those formative years of the child, still has an impact in how the relationship happened with us today. So what I'm saying is that relationship dynamic can be difficult. And during Mother's Day, this comes up for a lot of people, where there are people that are not being celebrated, and there are people who can't celebrate, who Mother's Day is really difficult for because of the way that they weren't mothered, they weren't nurtured, and they really needed it. So it's important to understand that, and to speak sometimes, not speak of it from both perspectives here today. So not all mothers will be celebrated, not because they aren't great parents, but because they also suffer from, as I said, toxic, harmful relationships. And while I don't want to use the term narcissist because we use it so much and it's become so overused, I don't want to use it lightly, because the experiences that people are having are so life-changing, so harmful, that we want to, what I'm going to attempt to do, and maybe not just in this episode of Stories That Shape Us, but throughout, is to describe the relationship dynamic. And hopefully, if you're listening and you're seeing your relationship with your mother in this dynamic, or your relationship with your daughter as a part of this dynamic, then you will know that, okay, so it's not just in my head. Because sometimes it can be really difficult for us to identify the relationship, to name the dynamic, to name the pattern, to believe that it is happening and that there's anything that we can do about it. And sometimes we feel stuck, not knowing, how do I live with this? Or can I live with this? Is it safe for me to live with this? Is it safe for me to ignore? What are the effects that it's having on me? How is it impacting me? Is it best for me to, and I've often talked about creating distance, because sometimes it's really necessary for us to create distance and separation, put boundaries in place. That means we have to stay apart because it's too harmful, and it's causing a lot of harm, not just psychologically, but physiologically. So the behavior that qualifies, some of the behaviors anyway, because it's a long list, and your dynamic the behaviors might show up in a different way. But some of the behaviors that qualify as harmful and toxic in the relationship is essentially selfish behaviors. But it's not selfish on the level of, no, I'm not giving you any of my drink, no, you can't have this, or I'm choosing me today. It's selfishness that goes at a deeper level. It's almost like it's a character quality, and this is how the person operates. But the person don't operates with everybody like that, just with you and some other people. You might see it in other ways, but for them, it's with you mostly, and everybody else see them in really glowing terms, really glowing terms. So for example, the daughter who experiences her mother as really selfish, very harmful, lies, demanding, manipulative, controlling, insults, all of those kind of things, but unhelpful, unkind, harsh. But to everybody else, she is talked about in glowing terms, and she is great for the community, and everybody loves her. So it's such a tricky thing to identify and to even name, because if the person who you know is very different to the person that everybody else knows, then that becomes, then is it in my head? Am I just the only one? Am I the one that's overly sensitive, or is this really happening? And so sometimes I say, write down what your experiences are. And when you see it sometimes in black and white, it can confirm for you, like, yes, this is the dynamic, this is what it is. How I feel when I'm around them is very real. The things that they do to me is very real. Their selfishness, their lack of insight, their lack of empathy, their lack of sympathy, their lack of helpfulness to me in any way. The opportunities that they use to break me down, the things that they say to me constantly, the way that boundaries are treated, just the differences in way they deal with you. So what they will do to everybody else is try to dazzle and impress, but they can't do it to you, because you're the one who really knows this person. You're the one who knows them and knows their behavior, understand their pattern. So you'll be able to see it for what it is. In a harmful dynamic like that, there's no responsibility taken. Nobody's taking responsibility, or the person that's doing the harm is not taking responsibility for their actions. They have no accountability. They blame instead. So when you sometimes present something to them as a behavior pattern that is harmful to you, that is hurtful, they will not say, I'm really sorry that I've hurt you. It will be pushed back, and they will blame you for the hurt that you've experienced. Sometimes they'll say you're sensitive and you're selfish, and if you were kind, and how come other people? And so they will use ways like that to deflect from hearing what you're saying and taking it seriously and doing anything about it. And you'll be blamed for raising it. You'll be sometimes called names for raising it, and they might withdraw for days and not speak to you because you name something that they've done wrong that has affected you, and you are requiring change. Boundaries with people like this that are harmful and toxic can be really difficult especially when you're in relationship with these people, when you're close in relationship with them. In a mother-daughter dynamic, it's really difficult to have boundaries when you're in the same space, because your boundaries are never going to be respected. Never going to be respected. They want to speak to you in the way they want to speak to you. And if you raise any concerns about how they speak to you and require change, then once again, you'll be seen as doing something wrong, because they don't have any plans on changing. One of the things people like this don't like is to be told that they're wrong, because they have an inability to do self-reflection. They have an inability to sit with themselves and to see their pattern, or to hear it from anyone, and to think about it, and to make any kind of decided efforts to change. So there are different kinds of people who have relational dynamic that are harmful. So there's the kind that will hear it, you will feed it back to them, they'll see it, they'll say, I'm really thankful, even though it hurts. And you will see them attempt to change. They'll start at working at change. And those people we can offer grace to, because we see that they're working at it. It's meaningful to them. You mean something to them. And even though their trauma that they experience, or their life experiences, might make it difficult for them to change, they're really working at change, and you can see it. So there's that. And then there's the person who you will share it with, and what they will do is use it as a weapon against you. They will use it as a weapon against you. They will not say, I'm sorry. They will not take responsibility. They'll not apologize. Sometimes you might get what might appear to be an apology because you have worn them down by talking and talking and talking. And finally, they might come to something that what might look like, or the conversation might come to what might look like a resolution after you're drained and exhausted. Because one of the things that they're very skilled at doing is not taking responsibility, and they are very skilled at turning it back. So you might go with the fact that when you slam the door and it shakes the frame, it causes me to feel frightened, and it reminds me of that time when. And it'll be a conversation sometimes that lasts for hours that makes them not wrong for slamming the door. That means you must deal with your triggers. And I mean, that's a very trivial example, but I want you to get the idea of what it might look like if you're trying to talk to someone with this kind of character pattern, how difficult it's going to be to ever get an apology out of them. Vulnerability is used as a weapon against you. So vulnerability of any kind. So might be they give something to you, or they've done something for you, and they will bring it back up whenever you require something of them in terms of change or change in behavior or responsibility taken, or they'll use it as a weapon against you. That means you can't ever tell them no, and you must always be available to them, or you must side with them in something that they're doing that goes against all of your values and and what you believe to be true. So they'll say, oh, well, you didn't feel like that last week when you took money from me, or when I gave you this thing, or when I made a request for you to get a job, or when I did this thing to help you. It's always going to come back. You're always going to be indebted to people like this when they do anything for you. And so being vulnerable is a massive risk. So it's important. Vulnerability is a risk anyway. So it's important to know, who am I being vulnerable with? Believe the pattern in this person's behavior, because the pattern is what tells you who the person is. When you see the pattern happening over and over again, believe it. You can hope that they'll change, but don't hope to the place where you share information about yourself, or you allow yourself to be vulnerable. That's too much hope for somebody with this relational dynamic. Those are just some of the ways that the relationships will be harmful. And I'm sharing this today, as I said, it's Mother's Day, and these might be some of the ways that you're thinking about today, the things that you're thinking about, and the sorrow that you might be experiencing, the regret and all of that you might be experiencing today as a daughter or as a mother, because you've experienced those dynamics. At the stories that at the Come See a Man conference, rather, I am doing a workshop on identifying it's a Finding Me workshop that helps us to identify the defining story in childhood that impacts our lives. So if that defining story is the mother-daughter connection, if the defining story is rejection and abandonment, whatever the defining story is for you that you know is impacting your life, come on to the conference, come to the workshop, and let us help you find a defining story that is impacting your life, however it's showing up. And let us help you, give you some tools to be able to day by day understand how the defining story is impacting you, and the things that you can do to work against it so that you can be free. If the defining story, as I said, is the mother-daughter relationship, it's such an important, crucial relationship. It recreates itself in relational patterns throughout our lives: how we parent, how we love, how we receive love, how we give love, how we love ourselves. So it's really important to be free from that. So I hope I'll see you at the conference. I'm putting the link below this video and also in the comment section. If you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or on Apple, the description of the show notes of the video, of the podcast rather, will have the link for the conference. I hope I'll see you there. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Stories That Shape Us. I hope you'll join me on the next story.